Hi, my name is Dr. Jennifer Katona, and I am excited to have this opportunity to talk to you about lesson planning. I've done a series of these videos, so if you have viewed the others, it's the same process. I'm going to be in your right corner here now for a moment just to do an introduction and say hello. And then I'm going to minimize myself and I'm going to talk you through this process. Um, there's another video where I go through curriculum mapping. And I talk about the 4 dimensions of curriculum mapping, thinking about what you want a student to be like when they leave your building, 5th grade, 8th grade, 12th grade, and then what you want them to know and be able to do at the end of any given year that they have with you. So if you're a high school teacher, your 9th graders, your 10th graders, your 11th and 12th graders. And then we want them to think about what we want them to know at the end of a unit of study. And all of that is covered in the other video on curriculum mapping. What we're going to talk about in this video is lesson planning. What do you want them to know and be able to do at the end of each lesson? So taking that unit plan that you have in that map that you spent all those weeks and months really reflecting and refining, and pulling them out individually and really thinking kind of nuts and bolts about our time in the classroom. So I have a sample lesson plan I'm going to take you through. A little bit hard to do a lesson plan without being up on our feet with a group of kids, but we're going to do our best. I have broken down lesson planning into 5 parts. These are probably the same things you're doing, but let's name them and really give them a function and some purpose. So the first part of the lesson is the warm-up. An average class is about 37 to 42 minutes. So let's say a 40-minute lesson. Your warm-up is going to be, a good 5 to 7 minutes. It's a great opportunity for you to get the energy of your students where you need it to be that day. You all know, if you've been in the classroom before, a first period class is very different than a before or after lunch period class or a last period of the day class. Every class brings its own energy. And even if the time of day didn't matter, the dynamics of the kids do. So you need to know, okay, I need to get their shakes out. They need 3 minutes just to talk post lunch because there's always something happen and we need to share those stories. So you're going to find a way to harness that energy. Or I really need to just get them breathing and focused after lunch, right? Or first thing in the morning, they're dragging, they're tired. I need to do a big shake out, big energy. So that might vary lesson to lesson. So what's great if you have common preps and you teach, your 5th graders and you get to see 3 different sections of 5th grade, your warm up might shift and adjust while the rest of the lesson remains the same. The second part of the lesson plan is what's often referred to as the prep activity or the mini lesson. So it's really preparing them for what they need to know to be able to really activate the work. The goal is that our main activity, we are up on our feet and we're really embodying whatever the content is. So you've got about 5 to 10 minutes, just a short bit of time to really kind of immerse them in the vocabulary, maybe a historical context, some prior knowledge, whatever it is you think they need to know really specifically so that they can do the main activity really well. The main activity is what you imagine. It's really the crux of the work. It's where students put into practice what you've taught them and where you really get to see if they're understanding the concepts. Some lesson plans might have 2 main activities, and that's okay. And unless you have a really long period, I would imagine 2 main activities is probably enough. Then you want to share out the work. And I've started over the years to put that in as its own part of a lesson plan and really break that out. Because oftentimes teachers will do share out as reflection. And it really isn't. It's really in tandem with your main activity, right? So usually a main activity is they broke it up into groups or they're doing some self work and they're really maybe playing with the character, they're working on their monologue, whatever it is, they're up, they're moving, right? It's a theater class, so they're really active and they're sharing you that work and it's the opportunity for feedback. And reflection is when we're all coming back together and you've proposed a strong single question that connects back to your unit's guiding question or essential question. And this can be done verbally with everybody sharing their response or in a written response as an exit ticket if there's not a lot of time. Maybe you have journals, you've decided what the best thing for your class is. And I say a strong single question because again, Other questions might branch off of that. If you drop a great opening question, students might, in their discussion, ask other questions, but you don't want to have prepared 2 or 3 questions, because those are usually 3 weaker questions versus 1 strong single question. You also want to make sure that that question is open-ended, and it often is your essential question from your unit of study, versus, okay, so how'd that go? What do we think? I'm also a big proponent of a modified version of Liz Lerman's feedback process. So, and I think a lot of people have used this, of just, I noticed, I like, I wonder. So sometimes in a pinch, when you can't think of that great question, just a simple I notice, I like, I wonder can help get things moving. Great. So here's a sample lesson. Here again are just the parts of the lesson, and I'm going to model this through a lesson of using Greek chorus to strengthen monologue work. I'm a formal middle school teacher, so in my mind's eye, we are working with 6th and 7th graders. So in a sample lesson plan format, I would start with my unit title. So this is a monologue unit, and that's important to note because we're going to do some Greek chorus work in our monologue unit, and you'll see why in a moment. So my unit title is monologue. This is lesson 3. It's also important to know this is not the first day of a monologue unit. It's not the last day. It's somewhere in the middle. And my purpose of my lesson is to help students explore physical gesture and vocal tone to strengthen their vocal intonation in monologue work. So I have found with middle school students that they often are a little monotone and maybe just stand or fidget and don't really have purpose or intentionality in their physical gestures and are not really playing around with all that their voice can do. And I find a little Greek chorus work really kind of shakes that up for them a bit and shows them some different depths of the work they can do. So my essential question, and I just made a note here, that's always the same across the unit, right? So how can studying Greek chorus strengthen our work in our monologues? So I wanted to make that note that it's like I said prior to that, right? That it's oftentimes your essential question is your reflective question. And then I'm going to note my prior knowledge. What do my students already know? They already know Tableau, and they already know our class warm-up ritual, right? That I took time during our ensemble building unit to really work through and make sure everybody has an understanding of our warm-up ritual. That's important because I want to be building on students' prior knowledge. I don't want to do a lesson on Greek chorus and utilize Tableau, but realize they haven't taught Tableau yet, and now I'm stuck teaching Tableau. That's its own lesson. That's not the purpose of this lesson, right? So if I set out to do this lesson and realize, oh, Tableau is really what I need them to be able to do this well, but I haven't taught that yet, then today's lesson's on Tableau, and tomorrow I'm going to do this lesson on Greek chorus. So I think it's important for you to pause and write down what you're building on so that you're really clear, because I've seen that happen a lot with new teachers, is they make an assumption about what their students can know, and then they realize the whole class has been spent you teaching Tableau instead of what you're intended to teach. You also really want to articulate what materials you need, right? Make sure that you're organized. People often ask me about classroom management, and while there are lots of dynamics in teaching, and teaching is extremely hard and challenging, I do find that being extremely organized and having all your materials right there and transitions is a lot of classroom management. So really be really specific in what materials you need and make sure you have them. That's kind of the first page of a lesson plan. And then there's the 5 parts which we talked about earlier. And so here's what they would look like through this example of Greek chorus as a use for monologue work. I would have my actors do their ritual warm up. And then I would take them through something called Show Me, which are still images, right? So still playing with this idea of Tableau. So I might have them show me fear, or what it feels like to be nervous or exhilarated. So I want to take them through a variety of emotions that are pretty heightened emotions, because I'm going to do some Greek chorus work in a minute, and I really want them to kind of push to the extremes. My prep activity is I really want to explore with them the different kinds of chorus and choral readings you can do. So I have this example of the end of Antigone, and I'm going to have them recite it in multiple ways, and then we're going to come up for some criteria for it. So I might have students first read it one word at a time. So if I have my students all in a circle, and I have 12 students, student 1 would say the, student 2 would say first, student 3 would say rule, student 4 would say of, and so on and so forth around the circle. So one student, one word at a time. After we do that, after we read this excerpt in that way, I would go over to the dry erase board and I would say, okay, let's talk about that. Let's talk about what one word at a time does. What feelings does it emote? How does it make you feel as an actor? How does it make you feel as an audience member, right? We would unpack that. And then I would do the same thing for what I call add a word. So again, if I have 12 students standing in a circle, student 1 would say the, and they would continue first. And on the word first, student 2 would be added. Then when we got to the word rule, I would have, by that third word, I would have 3 students talking, right? The first rule, and so on and so forth. So it's a adding on, a building of voices. After we do that, again, back to the board. Let's talk about that. How did that make us feel? What did that do for the words, for the moment? I might have them read it all at once as a chorus. How did that do? Let's unpack that. Then I do one called One Voice and emphasize key words. I would ask the group, let's decide 2 words or 3 words that we really want to kind of punch. Circle those. Then I would ask for 1 or 2 volunteers to read, and except for when we got to those key words, maybe gods, everybody would join in and say gods. And then once again, we would unpack that. That takes about 10 minutes. And then by the end of that, on the board, I've got 4 student identified and written definitions of these choral techniques. I also want to say with that prep activity that it was up and active. So they don't even necessarily know or realize, oh, I'm in a mini lesson now, right? They just, it all should flow very naturally. They're up and they're acting all the way, even though I know, and we know as teachers, that's not really the crux of the work yet. That's just really getting that foundational vocabulary. Now I have my main activity. So in small groups of students, they're going to have to present their text. So I would have had strips of paper with the previous quote on it. And in small groups of maybe 3 or 4, I would give them each one of those strips of paper. And I would give them the job of they have to present it, and they have to have 3 physical gestures, right? A link back to our warm-up activity where they did show me. So they have to really make a grand gesture for these words. They have to circle 3 key words, right? Where they really punch 3 key words, really in some way really make those words pop. And they have to have at least 2 styles of chorus that we talked about. So remember, when they get to this point in the activity, they've got 4 up on the wall and they need to pick 2. They need to work as a group and they need to be able to create something where they are reading that text and they're hitting these key ideas. Then we're going to share our work, right? Then we're going to share those out. We're going to talk about them. And then we're going to reflect. So again, I want to make this distinction really clear. We're going to share our work and talk about our work. It is not our reflection. Once we've done the sharing and the talking about our work, what choices they made, how did it make us feel as an audience, right? Those are my transitional questions. Then we're going to have our reflection time, and that's when we're all going to come back. We're going to sit in a circle, and I'm going to say, okay, how can the elements of Greek chorus impact our monologue work? Remembering this is lesson 3 in a monologue unit, and they've all been given monologues. I want them to think about gesture and strong vocal choices in their own monologue work, right? And then that's where I'm going to pick it up in lesson 4 for this work. Now, if you watch my other video, I noted that a lesson may take 2 or 3 days, right? So when I say a lesson, I understand that sometimes it's not always neatly in 40 minutes. I think this one can be, but recognizing sometimes sharing student work and unpacking student work. But that reflection question should come at the end of every class, right? So even if you didn't get through everything in one day, you should still be pausing at the end, leaving those last 5 minutes for reflection. So thank you for taking time to listen to my perspectives on lesson planning, and I hope you found it useful.